And I would say that in every place we're working, families with students with autism are concerned about the education their children are receiving, especially getting the supports that could be needed so autistic students can benefit from all the educational opportunities that are available in our schools. And we found across the state that there are a number of dynamic models out there to effectively serve autistic students. Indeed, many of the questions that parents were asking about services that we might provide in Howard County, um, those services may already have been provided in Montgomery or Prince George's County. Um, at the same time, some of these model programs are under stress due to budget reductions and changing philosophies. So we're really excited to have tonight's program, to have educators and parents who have worked in these three counties, Montgomery, Howard, and Prince George's. And I'm sure there's other things we can learn from other parts of the state. But we're going to start with these three. We will tonight have a panel discussion with our three panelists, and then we will have some time for reactions from some Howard County Public School System leaders who have joined us tonight, and then hopefully some time for some questions and comments. We're hoping to keep our program tonight to 1 hour. So let me just start by introducing our panelists. We first have Monica Martinez, who's a parent and founder of Martinez Advocacy, which helps families navigate special education. And before that, she devoted over 7 years to leadership roles, including serving as the first executive director of the Partnership for Extraordinary Minds, or better known as X Minds, who serves families in Montgomery County. Then we have Leanne O'Neill. She's a National Board Certified Exceptional Needs Specialist. She's currently teaching in Howard County. She's involved in the HCA Special Education Working Group, and she's a former co-lead of the Largo High School Autism Program in Prince George's County. And she's been a great resource to the Education Committee of the Autism Society as we think about and imagine a future for our system. And lastly, you have Michelle Payson. She is a board member as well, like me, of the Autism Society of Maryland. She's also a parent, a special educator, an IEP facilitator, and a department coordinator for special education in Prince George's County. So we have this wonderful panel here, and we're going to get started with our session. I'm going to start by just kind of throwing out a question to each panelist, ask them to speak for about 5 minutes, in the opening, and then we'll kind of go to some more, interactive questions. So, Monica, can you start by describing the autism-specific programs in Montgomery County and talk a little bit about what's been successful and the current status of these programs?
Thank you. Thanks, Andy. I just regarding the current status, what I'm going to present this evening is what is currently this school year in effect. It is our understanding that the new superintendent of schools is planning a reorganization of Montgomery County Public Schools, which will include the special education department. So how this is going to look for the fiscal year 26 is still up in the air. But currently, Montgomery County Public Schools does have an autism services or autism spectrum disorder services unit within the Department of Special Education. And that has one supervisor who oversees a number of program and instructional specialists. So under that umbrella, we have programs that are broken up into diploma track programs, and then certificate or students who are on the alternative learning outcomes track. In the elementary school, for diploma track students, there is the Autism Connections program. This name is about 2 years old. The program, however, is, I'm going to say 15 to 20 years old. It formerly was called the Asperger program. And as that suggests, it is a program that is for students who are academically at or above grade level. There are only 2 regional locations within MCPS for students. This program happens in a comprehensive elementary school building. And the students are in general education for more than 80% of their day. They go with educator support to math, science, social studies, specials, lunch and recess. However, they are in a self-contained classroom for English language arts and then homeroom or arrival dismissal. And that is where social skills instruction is provided. The program's been pretty successful, I would say. Um, the fact that there are only 2 locations does make it very challenging for parents to get their child into that program. Um, and recently, one of the locations was changed to a different school. So that's new for this year. At the secondary level, still on the diploma track, there are 2 different programs. One is called Autism Resource Services, also referred to as ARS, which is for students who are roughly 2, possibly 3 years below grade level. And we've been hearing that since the pandemic, the students in this program are presenting with more needs than in previous years, I'm sure due to some of the fallout from online learning. At the middle school level, ARS is provided in 5 locations. So that's again within the comprehensive middle school building. And in middle school, well, in both middle school and high school, students are typically in self-contained classes for English language arts and math. They have the ability to take a reading intervention. And then in middle school, they typically have 2 resource periods, one for executive functioning and one for social skills. The social skills is more also supported kind of like on an ad hoc basis where they are discussing issues that have come up during the day. So it's less abstract and more concrete than in Autism Connections, which we'll talk about in a minute. Again, students do go to some general education classes and they are supported by para educators. At the high school level, there are 3 locations in the county. Again, middle school, there are 5. And that actually is a recent expansion. So I think that happened 2 years ago. The middle school, I think, only had 3 locations, and now it's increased to 5 locations around the county. The other secondary diploma track program is Autism Connections. So that's a continuation of the elementary school program. Again, those students are at or above grade level. At the middle school level, there are 2 locations in the county, one up county, one down county. Students are mainstreamed in co-taught or supported classes. They have para-educator support. And then some students who present with written expression challenges do have the option for a self-contained English class. Again, these students, like their ARS counterparts, get 2 resource periods, again, one for executive functioning and one for social skills instruction. Many of one of the paradigms for social skills instruction is the peers program. So teachers are taking some of those components from that evidence-based curriculum. At high school level, Autism Connections is only in 2 high schools, and the level of support is dramatically reduced. Most students are mainstreamed in co-taught or supported classes. 9th graders usually have 2 resource periods, but there is no social skills instruction provided at the high school level. So both resource periods are for completing assignments, having opportunities for connecting with teachers, and then executive functioning. Once students get to 10th grade, they usually drop down to 1 resource period so that they can get all of their credits in. So those are the autism-specific programs on the diploma track. On the alternative learning outcomes track in MCPS, we start at the preschool level. We have something called CAP, or the Comprehensive Autism Preschool Program. Those students are in preschool for 5 days a week, 6 hours a day. And the teachers there use evidence-based practices to increase language and social and adaptive skills, as well as academic skills. Students, so at the preschool level, there really isn't a diploma versus certificate track, but de facto, most of these kids from CAP end up going into what we would call the classic autism services program. Um, those are also provided in comprehensive school building. There are several locations around the county. Students in those programs are in all self-contained classes. Um, the teachers use principles of applied behavior analysis, but it is not a strict ABA program. Um, discrete trial instruction is used, group instruction, and then some community-based instruction. At all levels, elementary, middle, and high school, um, students in these programs do get some exposure to typically developing peers through the Best Buddies program, or some other peer support program, or unified sports, which is at the high school level. Middle school students participate in community-based instruction and in-school pre-vocational skills, and then high school students prepare for their transition to adulthood by engaging in community-based vocational tasks. So those are the autism-specific programs in MCPS. Last year, we did have a learning center at the elementary school level, Darnestown Learning Center, which was just for students with autism that I don't want to say got completely dismantled, but the unique features that made it specific to just autistic students have been, I don't want to say, they've been taken out. So now the staffing ratio is more like the other learning centers at MCPS, and the very specific social skills instruction, I think they were using Teachtown, is not being provided anymore. So what will happen in the future? I think the movement is towards a more distributed model. So my understanding, which again, I'm going to caveat this with things could change, but my understanding is that the superintendent is hoping to kind of break down the kind of centralized those specialists out across the programs throughout the school district. And it looks like I might have some connectivity issues, so I apologize.
Yeah, no, Monica, that's a tremendous overview. We'll get more into, all the features that you talked about, because they're so important for us to understand across the state as we're thinking about how we serve autistic, students. Um, let's keep on going with that context of Montgomery. Obviously one of our larger districts in the state.
这个比较
Um,
大
Oh, Ivy, if you can mute your phone, thank you. I'm going to turn to Nichelle next. Was hoping you would describe, building off what Monica said, describe, the autism-specific programs in PG County and how they might differ from what you've seen available as a parent in Howard County.
Hi, everyone. So in PGCPS, Prince George County Public Schools, the IEP is geared towards student-specific needs that have autism. So looking at that and other needs that are apparent in the student's learning profile. So in case we look at social skills, training, executive functioning skills, organizational skills, and the like. So in the elementary school programs, we do have an autism extensions program that is at designated schools. With a small class to teach a ratio less than 10 students. Just like what Monica was saying, it's kind of hard to say that it's going to be an alternate certificate track, but we do look at if they're more on a moderate to severe cognitive levels for that particular program. In addition to autism comprehensive programs, in which we call comprehensive, that's the general ed side, where the students are on a high school diploma track, but have social skills training embedded into their schedule with additional support in their classes. Then we have students that fall into 2E called twice exceptional. Then we also have CRI, that's a community reference instruction, and the regional programs that's more profound cognitive disabilities. Just depends on the student-specific needs of the students and everything like that. So those particular areas, it falls into what the child needs are. Now compared to Howard County, it is similar as my daughter was fortunate enough to be able to be in a language-based non-public placement at Trellis, which was the model for the achievement programs at Cedar Lane schools for students of pre-K, elementary age range. So Howard County Public Schools usually start with programs like that, like a MINC program, we call it Multiple Intense Needs Classroom, for students who fall on the autism spectrum or developmentally delayed, um, to ALS or regional. Just remember, like, the IEP is the blueprint of the student's academic needs and placement decision, as we call it LRE, least restricted environment. So just going back to that, usually we do have kids that kind of fall in between. It's very hard to distinguish it from elementary to middle to high school. High school does not have a specific autism program unless it's a comprehensive program on the general ed side. So we kind of have it dropped off with autism specifically from mild to from moderate to severe, and from elementary to middle to high school. So that is a little bit of a difference we do. So we kind of break it up into, is it going to be a student that's twice exceptional, their tag, do they need a social skills training? Also, we look at the community reference instruction where they need more skill-based vocational training, life skills training. They're more moderate to severe cognitive disabilities. And also the regional program, we kind of look at it as more profound. And we make that distinction. And then, like I said, the autism program, which is something that they do have in a comprehensive side for students that are a lot more on a high school diploma track base. They need a little bit less support, but they maybe need that social skills training, someone shadowing them in classes to kind of keep them on those skills, working on executive functioning skills, something like that within the classroom. And compared to that to Howard County, there's some similarity, but also some differences overall.
Thank you so much, Nichelle, and we're going to keep pushing on those themes. Leanne, why don't you come in next? Can you build a little bit on what Nichelle said about PG County from your experiences teaching there, and what you see as some opportunities here in Howard County to maybe instruct a little differently?
Sure. So my experience in PG, I started out in the Parkdale Autism Program, Parkdale High School, and then was asked to go and co-lead. We started the Largo Autism Program. So the students within the Largo Secondary Autism Program, um, they received a social skills class throughout every other day in their blocking, but then their regular academic classes were based on their specific needs. So all diploma track, but we had small group supported inclusion classes for core academics that if students, they were able to sign up and take. So those were like English or Algebra 1, capped at no more than 10 students, led by a special educator with the support of a para-educator. Those were outside of general education, but not every student needed them. So I had some kids who were in AP Physics, and maybe they did need small group supported inclusion for English, or they were in AP English, but they were taking small group supported inclusion Algebra 2. The core factor would be that social skills instruction class. Now, part of that class would be used for direct social skills. We would talk about what was going on, lessons on how to self-regulate. The second half of that class was executive functioning in terms of learning strategies to help with academics, as well as us assisting in academics. Throughout the day, we had autism paras who would travel with our students based on their needs. So sometimes our paras just had a list of who to go pop in on and make sure they were okay. Other times we'd have groups of 3 or 4 students who would take core classes together and they would travel with that group. Um, Again, their academics were based completely on their each individual IEP, but we had that direct social skills instruction as a group outside of general education. Now, here in Howard County, I switched in and was first in the ED program on the secondary level. Um, a lot of our students who are autistic and diploma track are being put into those programs, but that program does not actually address social skills. There's no direct social skills intervention there. It is just an academic period and a quiet room that students can come. There is some extra supports in terms of paras being placed into their classes, and ED staff that will go check, and when a child is in crisis, they are called. But without that social skills support and without any form of academic support to help students, we're really not changing the outcome. We have so many less high school autistic students on diploma track than the other counties do. Really, where we're lacking is having an extra set of academic supports for students and social supports, whereas PG and Montgomery County have those options for students. I really think that Howard County could put that in just by adapting the programs that we currently have. We do have intensive resource classes, but only at 2 locations, one for middle, one for high. And they are very, very small and intensive. They have multiple interventions per day academically. There's no social supports. And then on the ED end of things, we do have kind of a safe, supported room, and we do have that extra staffing. But I think it's the combination of the two that we are missing. We need social support as well as academic options for our students.
Yeah, so let's continue the conversation, building up what you were just talking about, Leanne. So I, I wanted to just ask, Monica, you can talk about this, all three of you, how we can address the sensory and social communication needs of autistic students so they can meet their academic potential. And as the panel responds to that, I wanted to, people to reflect on what are some of the unique natures of autistic students and the kind of services, they need, and what maybe distinguishes them, from other students with disabilities. So I don't know, anyone can go first, but Monica, since I called you out, maybe you want to go first, if that's okay.
Sure. I will be really interested to hear what the other panelists have to say. I think, oh, again, sorry about my connection if I drop out. I think it can be really challenging to provide, the requisite support for students with sensory needs. In some of our programs, like the ARS middle school program that I was talking about, there is a sensory room there. It's not perhaps as extensive as a student might need, but it is a separate place where a student can go to take a break if they're becoming overwhelmed and need. And there's a variety of activities in there that they can engage in to kind of re-regulate. This was also one of the great parts about the Darnestown program, this learning center, which is an elementary school center program that has been rebranded so that it's not autism specific. But they did have a sensory room there that had OT support who had, come in and kind of made kind of a modules for the student to go through. So it was much more of a sensory diet in the sense of a real diet. Like students were supposed to follow a particular regimen in order to bring their systems back to baseline. So I do think having that, what Leanne described about that quiet place to reset is really a critical piece for our kids who are struggling with sensory issues, and being able to identify that safe space to go to, and being able to leave their classroom when they need to before they become dysregulated, I think is really a critical piece. What was the other part of the question? Did you say communication needs? Is that the
Yeah,
other?
and we can have the other panelists pick up on
Yeah.
that too. I mean, I heard both Leanne and Michelle talk about teaching social communication. Can you just talk a little bit more what that, looks like, and like, do we know ways to really do that, effectively?
Is that for me or for one of the
Why
other
don't we bring in
panelists?
one of the other panelists,
Yeah,
Leanne or Michelle, so we get everybody in?
Sure, I'll jump in.
All right. Oh,
Oh, go ahead, Michelle.
I wanted to kind of just piggyback off the other question, if
Okay,
I can.
go ahead, Michelle, do that, and then we'll bring in
Yes,
Leanne.
yes, I wanted to piggyback. So I wanted to kind of just go back because Monica said some good things too, but I want to add to some of it for addressing the sensory needs. The first thing I would tell parents to do, just on top of that, is to get a comprehensive evaluation for gross motor, sensory integration, and social skills. They have evaluations that sometimes we can look at that. That's usually done by occupational therapists, a speech therapist, school psychologist. So when you want to implement the sensory diets, right? Or some people don't like to say sensory diets, but we call it different strategies to be to help to get them students that have maybe vestibular input needs or other needs that that the sensory that students that are on a spectrum do sometimes latch out to they have those particular needs. It's a blueprint for that, so they can reach the maximum potential in those areas. So and students can the team can create a 504 plan or IEP. It doesn't necessarily have to be an IEP. I just want to put that out there too for accommodations. Um, so just some examples, like I said, sensory diet, like Monica was saying, I have a sensory room in my particular school that I created this school year that we implemented. Social skills training, peer buddy systems, gross motor activities, things that sometimes you can't do it in the sensory room, but you're doing certain gross motor activities like we call heavy, I forgot what they call it, heavy training, something like that, where they kind of use certain aspects to kind of help them with attention and focusing. So those things are very unique for every student and every child because some students need it more than others, and we look at those particular areas. So that's just something I just kind of want to pick it back off of that. And what was the next question?
It was about social communication. How can we teach social communication?
Definitely the peer budding is definitely one. Using visuals is, and then it depends on the student's needs. So, if you have a student that is very verbal, maybe, don't have that level of not being nonverbal. So the social communication we're looking at are, how to interact amongst each other appropriately, the situational situations. Like I used to teach a class, a social skills class, where we did everything situational, how do you respond to certain things and how do you pick up on facial expressions? How do you do those things and generalize those skills into the community? So they know how to interact because those things, even though they're high functioning, we would call it more on a very high end, they don't pick up on those certain cues. They don't pick up certain things, how to interact appropriately. They come off as being very direct, very rigid sometimes, and they don't get some of those innuendos sometimes that we would pick up on. So we have to give them practice of particular skills to kind of teach them that in the classroom, and that could be taught in a social skills program, a social skills classroom, or just in therapy sessions. Use those particular skills to kind of help them to translate that into everyday living.
Thanks, Michelle. Leanne, you want to build on that? How you see social communications? We've talked about this before.
Yes. So twofold, and I just want to touch back on the sensory aspect as well. One thing that I loved about Largo was that for our autism program, we had a sensory room, and it wasn't as much as Kenmore Middle School in PG has an amazing sensory room. Absolutely amazing. But ours was set up almost like a teen lounge. We did have some different lights and different sensory panels the kids could touch, but we also had like the gamer chairs that would rock. And we would teach our students in that social skills class different techniques to help calm them down. We would do um, different sensory preference surveys to try to get a sense and to build that body awareness. Well, when I'm angry, I like to go to my room and listen to music, and I tend to headbang a lot when I do it. Okay, so you're telling me you need some vestibular input because you're moving your head. So, how can we do that in an appropriate manner when we're at school and upset? And then we teach the skill explicitly. Okay, well, each one of my students had a flash pass that they could use, show to a teacher, and we used the 5-point scale. So I'm a 5, I need to skedaddle. okay, you can go straight to the sensory room. Someone from the autism program is going to meet you there. And then we would learn to implement those things. I think in Howard County, not all of our teachers, gen ed or even special ed, has a real understanding of the sensory needs of autistic youth. I think there's a lot of miscommunication. I've seen here sensory breaks being given as incentives, rewards for good behavior, and it shouldn't be. Um, Sensory breaks should be scheduled and non negotiable. If I have a student that is learning that when I feel this way, what helps me is to take a walk, then my student should be able to use a flash pass and utilize that skill before we hit meltdown territory. Um, it's like shaking up a bottle of soda. We got to let a little out at a time. And if not, then we have a meltdown and we're very quick to blame the behaviors. But really, our student might have been asking us for what they need. And instead, because not all of our teachers are being instructed on this, they're very quick to say, no, you're trying to get out of your work, instead of the fact that our student is using a strategy to try to self calm. So I think we do need to instruct our teachers as well on these very easy things that can be used not just for the autistic population, but for any teenager or little guy or any student, really. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I would say. Integrating sensory things too. I've had teachers who've yelled at students for having a fidget in class. Instead, we at Largo would normalize that. So, like, anyone could go up to the fidget bin in any of their classes, not just my kids, anyone. We had some alternative seating options. And because it was a regional program, then the entire school just sort of normalized that. Um, so that kind of puts the UDL principles into classes. Um, I think that needs to change here in Howard County. It would really support our students. In terms of social skills, I started a social skill pilot program at Mount Hebron High School last year and the year before that. And we started just with a couple of our autistic students who were in the ED program and eventually turned it into an ALS program. We saw an 80% decrease in maladaptive behaviors from our students over that year period because we were able to directly talk about, through social stories, through role playing. What do you do when you're angry? Well, I'm stuck in line for lunch and they ran out of pizza. All right, now how are we going to address this situation? Um, so, yeah, that's one of the things that I think we need.
Thank you so much. I want to keep the panel going for a little bit. I wanted to address a couple of questions in the chat. There were some folks that were asking for maybe some more follow-up information about the different programs available in the different counties. Melissa and I will pull some of that together, and we'll make sure to email out some resources to everyone here. So we will work on that. I wanted to just kind of one question I really wanted to ask all of you all. Monica, when I hear you talking about different programs, in Montgomery County, one reason I wanted to have this event, we decided as a committee to have this event is, you listed, I think that was one reason you got the question, 6 or 7 different programs with autism, in their name. We have maybe have a spectrum in PG County. There are some programs that have that, but not as many. Here in Howard County, we have our multiple intensive needs classroom, which was, something that the autism community advocated for, but it's not specific for autism. Um, I think we have this discussion around inclusion, and the idea of, our commitment, to inclusion. I wanted to kind of ask, the panel, how does the idea of autism programs, does that go against the idea of inclusion, or is it kind of, can these two things fit together? And anyone can raise their hand and jump into that one.
Well, I'll start off. I would definitely say I understand the premise of inclusion as a parent myself of a child with autism, but also I look at it as a special educator lens of how we could fit students into that model. And I think what parents have been advocating, because I really want to hone in on that a lot of parents have advocated for inclusion. Wanting these students not to feel excluded with their non-disabled peers, feeling that they can rise to occasion and be able to interact with their peers, regardless of disability, regardless of what some of the maybe some of the behaviors that come along when it was stimming or any other things, that they don't want them to feel like they're different, and they want them to feel like they want to be connected, because the reality is once a student does leave out of high school, um, we as parents, we want our children to feel like they're able to be as well adjusted, as independent as possible. I think that's a way of thinking and wanting to feel that way. Um, but I will say within the time and just being an educator and looking at inclusion, um, it's good to have that exposure, but it's not in a, it's the way it has been set up now. It's been some kids are not getting the benefit of the academic supports that they need sometimes to that level, or even the social skills piece of it. Even though the social skills is to interact with their non-disabled peers, they still need to have some level of training, some level of everybody else buying into that. And the training needs to be done not just with special educator. It also needs to be done with general educators. It has to be done from building principals. And I think, right now, what we've seen is that we've seen a lot of educators, especially on the general ed side, that's only been trained to take maybe one class of certification. If they're not completely in the buy-in of this, not understanding what those needs are for these students, that needs these supports, that might have some very rich-like behaviors. These students are being actionized in certain ways. So the buy-in is not as well, it looks good on theory, it looks good on paper as theory, but it's for the practice of it. We've been seeing a lot of great areas that I've been seeing as an educator that is very frustrating sometimes to try to have to explain why this particular student need this particular level of support compared to the other students. A lot of that is we're not giving them rigor, enough structure. Or some kids are very smart, but these still cannot be mainstream in the general ed classroom because of other interfering behaviors. So I say that to say that the model, I think, in attention wise, it is definitely something that I think every parent can strive for, but understand that the level of support and training is still not there the way it needs to be for it to really be implemented for our students. And that's just something I just want to just put that out there.
No, that was so well said, Nichelle. Monica or Leanne, do you like to build on those comments?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, Nichelle. I think in theory, like you said, it looks great on paper. And I think, of course, we want our students to be integrated with typically developing peers. But I agree with you that the manner in which inclusion happens, unfortunately, is sometimes detrimental to autistic students because teachers are not, and like you said, general education teachers especially, don't have the requisite training or understanding of what the needs of the autistic population are. And I think that in order for inclusion to work, it's not only, there has to be buy-in from the principal level at the school, the general educators at the school, and even, and especially the para educators, because they're spending the majority of the time like directly with the students, even when the teacher can't be there. So there needs to be more, robust training all around about how to support these students so that they can engage with their typically developing peers in a way that's going to be meaningful for them. I could go on, but I don't want to take away from Leanne if she has
No,
to
thanks so
add.
much. Leanne, did you have anything to add on that question?
Yes, definitely. Um, like you ladies both said, it's a great idea, but inclusion needs to be valuable for our students as well. Um, in the ALS programs in Howard County, many times our students are being pushed into the back of a class that is not academically appropriate for our kids. And then we wonder why behaviors spike. We don't have the supports to really make it meaningful for the student. We also don't have necessarily the staffing supports to assist that student in the class. I don't think autism specific programming takes away from inclusion. The students that we had at Largo were in the general ed population for 80% or more of the time. But having them out for social skills gave them a safe place to talk through um, social situations that were happening, to learn explicit skills, and to work on academic supports that was comfortable for them, was not overstimulating, and allowed them to remain diploma track. Of our high school students in Howard County that have a primary IEP diagnosis of autism, we have less than 40% on diploma track. That is, I mean, it's a huge number of students that are not going diploma track. And on the elementary level, we're pushing kids into ALS as low as third grade and then not giving them supports to academically catch up. So we're deciding their fates that early because we don't have staffing that would allow them to remain with their general ed peers and access the curriculum. So instead, we're putting them in the ALS room and then bringing them out for circle time and for um, music and our specials, but not so much the academics. And so we've already kind of sealed their fate at that level. Whereas having kids outside the general education for one or two classes, that's not the full inclusion model that Howard County wants, but it's allowing more kids to work on and remain diploma track. So I think that's a good sacrifice. And let's make those inclusion times meaningful for our populations, whether that be a, peer model social skills class for ALS students, or expanding our unified classes. We have a wonderful unified dance class at Mount Hebron, and we have some unified gym classes. What if we expanded that? But we can't just throw our kids out saying it's inclusion and then watch behaviors spike and then wonder why we don't want inclusion or why it's not working. We have to put those supports in place so it's meaningful for our students.
Thanks so much, Leanne, and all the panelists. Before we get to some questions, I really appreciate Dr. Richard Jeffries, our special education director here in Howard County, for joining the panel, joining tonight's event. And I wanted to give him just a few minutes, to, give some reactions. We've heard a lot of themes: smaller class sizes, social skills, paraeducators, resource rooms. So I want to just kind of give the Dr. Jeffries just a chance to react. Any thoughts and reactions he has to the panel so far?
Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to say it's my pleasure to join you all this evening. Also would like to thank Awesome for hosting this really important event. It's really a critical part of our partnership and working together. And I really appreciate you hosting the time to get some perspective and your thoughts from different individuals on the panel. And I really am appreciating the panelists tonight and hearing your different varieties and perspectives. So currently we're in a period of reviewing our programs, looking at our special education programs to see what we have currently in place, what we're lacking. And I agree, at this point, we're not meeting the needs of many of our children with our current programs and the current program design. So I'm looking forward to hearing from our special education program review and finding those results and seeing where we can increase things that are strong, change things to meet our students' needs. And the work is not going to be easy. It's going to take really rolling up our sleeves and getting dirty to really make sure we get all this work together. I think Leanne, I had an opportunity to discuss with recently about what we could do in our county. So I really appreciate that time outside of this, but I also want to have conversations with Andy and with other individuals within the county and other neighboring counties as well. Like what we're seeing with Monica and Nichelle. I really want to have these conversations to consider what opportunities and have these meaningful conversations about what we can do to strengthen our programs to work with children with autism. I think that's one of the most critical points and really need to focus on this population and really think about how we can support that. So I'm really appreciating the opportunity to hear the different perspectives. And I really wanted to make sure I emphasize that. Thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Jeffries. And I know you were at the CCAC meeting last night, and I know you haven't, your days, I'm sure, started early with all the things that happened with our kids. So we appreciate you staying with us into the evening. We have some questions, from the audience, and I wanted to give some time for that. There's two questions in the chat relating to PG County. Nichelle and Leanne, I'm hoping you can tag team these, and I'll put them out both together. The first question was, what was the main differences between Howard County and Prince George's County schools? And the second was following up on something I think you said, Nichelle, how do I request a comprehensive evaluation for gross motor that you mentioned, Nichelle? So I'm hoping the two of you can tag team those two questions.
Well, the differences in the programs, Howard County, well, I will just go from my experience as a parent because I've never taught in Howard County. So I'm going as a parent. My daughter was in MINC, multiple intense needs classroom, but she also was in the Trellis non-public placement program, which the achievement program modeled that. And that program was our early intervention program, language-based program. So they did use a lot of ABA methodologies, like discrete trial and instruction, verbal behavior. They kind of, use some of those particular skills to kind of work on it. And it was definitely worked for my daughter. They used a lot of visual supports, knowing how to communicate, in which students, they are more moderate to severe and of autism, they need that particular level of support. I will say for PG County Public Schools, they have the Autism Extensions Program, which is only at a couple of elementary schools, and it's only for students in the elementary schools. It does not carry over to middle or high school. So for middle high school, we dropped down from like an autism program that's comprehensive, a high school diploma track program, or either they're on an alternate certificate path. Those programs will be like a CRI, regional, but it would not be an autism specific program. And that makes sense to parents. So when you say, I want an autism specific program, you don't really find that too much after it drop off from elementary to middle to secondary, basically we call it. So that's a little bit of the difference. But I will say with PG County Public Schools, we do have social skills training, working on executive functioning, organizational skills, students that need that particular level of support. And it could be in a general ed classroom. They might not be in an autism program on comprehensive side. for comprehensive, they might just be a student that has an IEP, but they need that level of support. And their grades are good enough that we can say, hey, we could put them in a social skills program. And that's an elective we use, that they will be able to have that level of support. And definitely that is, it's helpful for a lot of our students. And they have that for middle school and high school. And I think what was the second part of the question, Andy?
How do you request, you mentioned requesting a comprehensive evaluation. I think you were talking about in the context of OT, if I remember.
Yes. Yes. So usually when an occupational therapist do evaluation, you get it two ways. You could get it through, an IEP referral request at the school, or you could get a private independent evaluation. A lot of parents, I find sometimes for me, I tell people as an educator, but also as a parent, that schools are going to look at what are the needs for the child as far as sensory or gross motor skills in the school base. So if you want more of a comprehensive piece that is overall from school to home, it's better to get that particular evaluation outside of the school. So you have something more to reference to. Now the school will implement things, but it's more school-based. So if it's something with handwriting or just some sensory issues that are affecting them be able to attend to and focus in the classroom, you want that. But if you get that private piece of the occupational therapy, you can see certain skills that you do and you can be able to carry over from school to home. And I had to do that for my daughter myself because she needed those particular skills, and I knew certain things were not going to be always going to be implemented in the school, and vice versa. I wanted some things that I need to work on at home for myself as a mother with my daughter in the community. So having that particular evaluation and be able to see those skills on both sides is very helpful.
Thank you, Nichelle. And I think what you mean, so you're talking about going more to a medical professional to do those.
Yes.
So they can look at you.
Yes, occupational therapist is like just like a physical therapist or speech and language therapist. They would definitely do the evaluation in a private setting, and usually your insurance will cover it. So just letting parents know that if your insurance will usually cover it too. If not, then you can pay for it out of pocket. I mean, everybody's situation is different, but just kind of know those are the options. Yes.
All right. I think that was a great answer. Let's go to some other questions. I think Leanne dropped a statistic about diploma track and certificate track in Howard County. I don't mean to put you guys on the spot, but Nichelle or Monica, there was a question in the chat if people know how autistic students do in the other two counties in terms of being on diploma or certificate track.
Oh, can I?
I do not have that statistic to provide, I'm afraid. But Leanne, yeah.
So I actually do have the Montgomery one. I don't have the PG one. That wasn't available to me, but of high schoolers with the primary of autism on their IEP, it's around 62% are diploma track in Montgomery County. Whereas, and that's a much larger number than us. So we have, what did I say, 40%-ish? Let me pull up my numbers. Yes, so we have a lot less students who are diploma track. We're also sending a greater number. They're sending 12% of their high schoolers with a primary of autism out to non-public schools, and we send over 22% to non-public schools. So again, if we had an autism-specific program, then we could take all of the money that we are spending on non-public placements. We could take a large amount of that and move students back to our own program.
Thank you, Leanne. We think we just have one more time for a question from the chat. There was a lot of different program models mentioned tonight, including ABA, and some of these are programs that autistic adults have had questions about. Looking back on, how do you all take your leadership in trying to consider the perspectives of autistic self-advocates? How have you done that? Whether the students that you know or adults in organizations or who have just gotten involved in the community? All right.
Anybody? Well, I guess I go.
Everyone go. Everyone went up on the exact same moment. Monica, let's bring Monica in because we just heard from Michelle and Leanne on the last question.
Thanks. Yeah. Just a reminder, I am an advocate, so I don't actually, I can't make policy decisions at the school level. So I was, kind of sharing what I know MCPS does. But as an advocate, there are times when, I'm helping parents with IEPs and rewriting things where we do like call out specific goals or objectives in the IEP that are not neurodiversity affirming, and then try to work with the school team to rewrite that, explain, because I think unfortunately a lot of, school staff and a lot of parents don't really know what all of the neurodiversity affirming practices are. So, I've had, like, for example, I've had IEP goals about student will make eye contact when speaking with others. Like, okay, well, we're not going to keep that in the IEP. But I think the larger issue is that, especially other students don't understand what autism is and, how it can present itself. And so, when my son was in elementary school, he was in this Autism Connections program. So he spent a good part of his day in general ed. And so some other parents and I really we took it upon ourselves to make like an autism acceptance month where we would share various things from ASAN or other, what's his name? Engelberger, the gentleman who wrote the Origami Yoda series. He's autistic, so just really highlighting and trying.
Uh-oh. So Monica, come back to us. All right. Well, I'm going to let Monica, Monica becomes unfrozen. We've reached our time that we wanted to do tonight. I know everyone is so busy with everything. We want to let you get back to your families. There were more questions in the chat than we had time to do. Some of them our panelists may have answers to. Some of them, Dr. Jeffries, I may push to your team because there are some specific questions around programs in our county. And what I think I'll do, if it's okay with Melissa, we'll put them in a Google Doc. We'll get the answers to them the best we can. And when we circulate the recording for the webinar, we'll put a link to that Google Doc for the questions that we could not get to. Thanks again to our panelists. Thanks to our wonderful interpreters that provide ASL and Spanish interpretation. And thanks to Dr. Jeffries for coming. Thanks to all of you for joining with us tonight. And we will look forward. I will put one plug in tomorrow at the board meeting. We will hear from in Howard County the initial information about the special education review, what they're finding. So that's at 4 o'clock tomorrow. You can come or watch it online. So thanks everyone, and look forward to seeing you with you soon. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thanks.